Well, hello and welcome back to the ManCamp Podcast. I'm Tracy Eakes, and this is Todd Braswell, pastor of Waterlife Church in Lenore, North Carolina. So come on in. Let's talk about what's going on.
Let's talk about what's going on. It's good to be here with you, Tracy, today.
It's good to be here with you. And I know we had a change of plans on Sunday with the ManCamp intent of going out, so you want to talk about that a little bit?
Obviously we're taking it on the road last week out to Kent's house. We love going out to Kent's out there in Buffalo Cove and having a barbecue, and then the weather was not conducive. Beautiful the day before, but not conducive, but scrambled to go ahead and get back into the book, which we're going through, of course, Joby's book, Stand Firm, Act Like Men, and so got a lesson put together that afternoon, but we had a really good discussion with the guys. So it was, I think it was a good night overall anyway, even though we couldn't do that. And for the guys, just so they know ahead of time, Kent agreed we're going to do it next month. So third Sunday, we'll roll out there next month. So I told everybody, go ahead and eat that meat or barbecue it or just put it in the freezer and bring it back out, and we'll come back out and hopefully we have a nice 80-degree warm sunny day the next time. It'd be good. Okay,
now just for the men who haven't been there, talk about getting it out there. Are we going to meet at the church? Do we need four-wheel drive vehicles? Or are we going
a little bit of both. Some guys know where to go now out there, but a lot of the guys we just meet here in carpool from the church. Usually we meet at 4:30, get out there by 5 because it takes a little while to get out there. But then Kent's usually got the Army truck, the deuce and a half, to load us up and our coolers and all our gear and ride us to the top of the mountain. And people are going to love it. Like Kent's really done a lot of work up there. It's got a nice, real big, broad place. He's graded off now. Got a great little barbecue spot up there, pretty spot. Good. So it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to getting out there with the guys. It's always fun. We got a lot of new guys in ManCamp, so it's always fun around the campfire and the barbecue and getting to know people. So it's going to be fun. So we're stay tuned for that. Okay. Almost through with this book, though, by the way. We're getting close to that. And then, just so you know, so there's Nick Freitas has a brand new book coming out next month called The Man Book, I think it's called. Okay. So that one I ordered. So that will be interesting to see if that might be a thing. I know you know who he is. Probably a lot of our guys on social media
That's what I was going to say is just for the general populace, who is Nick Freitas?
Yeah, so Nick, if you've ever seen these funny videos of a kind of burly guy with a coffee cup that says some kind of funny things. He was former Green Beret guy, military guy, but then Nick went to the House of Representatives in Virginia for a good while, and then now he's out of that. He's got a podcast that he does, and he's just a super guy, and I would love to get him here at Waterlife at some point. So he is a great speaker, great thinker, good godly guy, but he's written a book, called The Man Book now, so that should be interesting.
Yeah, and you had talked about him on your recent visit to D.C.
Correct.
Yeah, and what was his message for the men there?
Yeah, he was kicking everybody in the pants. So that's the best challenge for pastors that I've seen in a lot. And the guys that were in that room are like-minded. They were not. That was not the woke pastor crowd there. That's the Bible preaching crowd. That's the the crowd that's getting it done in my mind. And he just gave us a challenge about not soft pedaling things, and and political things matter because policies matter and policies affect people. But also it's like he did a little talk on, like, which I've always said the same thing when people say you can't legislate morality. It's like every law is legislating somebody's morality, right? Whatever, because somebody's thinking it's good, bad, or whatever. But he said, the real key is like, who's going to rule?
Right.
Is it going to be the righteous or the wicked? You know, and so he's just talking about pastors get in there, but he said, your highest responsibility is obedience to God. Be obedient to God in the pulpit. I mean, it was a barn burning challenge. Yeah. It was a good kick in the pants, but it was good. Yeah. So he's a neat guy, and he's funny too, which is really neat. But a smart guy too. Yes. Like for the guys that like podcasts, his podcast is really good, and his name is spelled Freitas, Freitas, I believe, and I forgot the name of his podcast right off the hand, but it's worth the search, and I guarantee you, if anybody's on social media, you've probably seen reels of this guy because he's got a pretty good reach. But super solid guy, and got a book coming out, so I'm kind of excited. I saw that just the other day, and I'm like, okay, I'll pre-order that one and see if that might be something to take our guys through, because he always comes from a Christian perspective about everything, so it might be something.
And he's a big burly manly guy.
He's a big burly guy. Yeah, he sure is.
Yeah. Well, speaking of manly men and acting like men, the chapter of the book that we were dealing with is about love, and
Yep.
the verse referring to let everything be done in love.
Yeah.
So just want to recap that and what we talked about on Sunday night.
Yeah, so, we've been walking through that verse. It's our series verse from ManCamp too, 1 Corinthians 16, that be strong, and, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men. But that last line, let everything be done in love. You got that kind of the first part, like be watchful, be strong, stand firm. That's just kind of like what we would say. That's the manly stuff. That's I got that. I'm protector, provider of my wife. And then there's that last line, which is the most challenging thing, which to me is the most manly thing. It's like let everything, not something, not most things, not the majority or the minority. Let everything you do be done in love, and that's a tall order.
Yes, it is.
And I love the fact that he says, let it be done in love. And we spent a lot of time talking about that Sunday night, that biblically, when you look at love, love is action.
Right.
It's not so much warm, fuzzy feelings. And that's, I think, where it creates trouble for some of us. Like, well, I can't stand that guy at work, and yet God tells me to love him. How can I love him, like I love my good friend? And he's like, well, he's just asking you to act in love, And that's still a tall order.
Right.
But it's not that warm, fuzzy feeling thing. I mean, when we were looking at 1 Corinthians 13.
Right.
Tracy, you've been at weddings like
Yes,
I
I
have,
have.
and as a pastor, I've done weddings. We always read that, and it sounds very poetic. But I'm like,
Right.
if you listen to that,
Yeah.
it's like I tell couples all the time before I do their weddings. I said, you should really read and look at that
Yes.
list of what you're signing on to do, but also listen to the vows that you're making too.
Right.
They may rhyme and be poetic, but man, you're signing on for something big. Make sure you understand what you're doing.
In sickness and in health.
Till death. Yeah, till death they part. That's God's standard, and so. I think Joby in the book talked about like the commitment you're making really is to say, I will do even if she doesn't.
Yes.
It's like I'm committed to do my part even when maybe she doesn't live up to her part. And she's committed even if I don't live up to my part, that kind of thing. But I love that description of love. And Paul, in the background of that in 1 Corinthians 13, that church got all kinds of problems. It's amazing that when I was in Gaffney, there was a Corinth church.
Yes.
And I'm like, it's amazing that some of these churches name themselves Corinth, because you got guys sleeping with his mother-in-law. You got all kinds of crazy stuff going on in that church, And they were not loving one another very, very well. There was a big pride about whose gifts were more important. And there's all kinds of stuff going like that. And Paul's just talked about that and how everybody's got a gift. We're all part of the body. It's all important. And then he goes into the love thing. And he's kind of like, look, you can talk all day about your gifts and all this, but you don't have love. Waste of time. You missed the whole thing. And he goes through that. Description there in that 13th chapter. He says, and I love how he starts. Love is patient. And I'm always like, do you really have to start with that one? Like, I'm already behind the 8 ball.
Yes.
I'm getting started with that one. I'm a little bit impatient in my life. He says, love is patient and love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It's not rude. It's not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil. It rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. And it says love never fails. And we were trying to get across to the guys looking at that day, that every one of those things is not so much feeling as it's doing. It's an action thing. If you're patient, you're going to be patient when people try your patience. When someone is unkind, we're going to return it with kindness. Now, that's a hard one. We're not going to respond with envy. We're going to respond the opposite way. Hey, I'm happy for you. I'm not going to be rude. I'm going to be, polite. All that kind of stuff. Right. I'm not going to keep a list where I'm tempted to keep a list. So all of that is really, really quite a tall order. It's just action, and it's one of those things that clashes against our me monster nature.
Right.
And I think that's really the hard thing. And I'd heard this before, where a lot of times we think, what's the opposite of love? Well, it's hate. Love and hate, like tattooed on your knuckles, Tracy. Tack on love and hate.
Brother hate, brother love. Fight
there you
it
go.
out. Yep.
But the reality is, the opposite of love might be indifference or selfishness.
Right.
Because if I love you, I'm having to set self aside for the sake of you to do these things. But if I'm, selfish, there's no way I'm loving, right? Because it's a sacrificial thing. So it's one of those things where it's really easy to, God tells me to love everybody. Like the practical living of that out is hard. I mean, think about it. It's even hard loving the people that we really do love, like that we get along with in relationships with. I mean, relationships are challenging, but much less the people that are difficult in this world, and people that really try our patience. What was it? Rick Warren calls them extra grace required people,
Yes.
And that's probably all of us at some point. So
Yeah.
it's tough. I mean, it's challenging to act in love, but man, what a great, call. And that's our command. He says, as a man, he says, let everything be done. Everything you do be done in love. And there's that action thing.
Right.
Be done in love. Like you're going to be kind. You're going to be patient. You're going to be not keeping a list, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You're going to protect. You're going to, persevere.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, to quote DC Talk from the early 90s, love is a verb.
Yeah,
So,
they did have that song.
yes, they did. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about patience and kindness. Okay. So the American macho ideal of what a man is not necessarily Fred Rogers coming to be your neighbor and being patient and kind.
Hey, let me stop you on that. Have you seen some of these reels where they do the AI
Yes.
with Mr.
Oh, yeah.
Rogers? There's some that are inappropriate, but there's
Yes.
some that are pretty doggone funny. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's another note.
Yeah.
As someone who grew up with Mr.
With
Rogers.
Rogers.
Sorry, not to
Yeah.
interrupt.
Not to interrupt. But
yes, I mean, he's
yeah.
a very kind, meek, mild
right.
kind of man.
And how does that tradition of the gruff, independent, individual that some people strive to, how does that work against this mandate to be kind and to be patient?
Well-
And let me just put the one thing that immediately comes to my mind when I think about men being kind and patient is holding the flashlight for your dad while working on the car in the dark.
You never got that right.
You'd never,
the angles were always wrong.
right. Exactly. So anyway, just what are your thoughts along that line?
Well, like okay, so you talk about the kind of standard, for a lot of us in American pop culture and everything, we grow up with kind of the idea that there is that, well, a real man's going to say it like it is, going to fire off at the cuff, and
Right.
take care of the problem, whatever. So the idea of patience and kind of like thinking about that, probably not at the top. However, there's that part of man, like that strength of the guy that is kind of quiet and kind of think and be under control. It reminds me of biblically the word meek. We think that being weak. That's not what it means. It literally means power under control. Like an animal that's harnessed, like this huge powerful animal that's under like that is manhood. So when we can be patient, even when people try our patience, that's really a thing of strength.
Yes.
Like our culture, we're all about big, loud, I'm going to get in your face, I'm going to do all that stuff. So it is but which really is more strong? Like really it's more strong to be able to have some self-control, keep your power under control, right? Keep it reined in with being patient and being kind, but I think a lot of guys, just because of what you see in movies and you see on TV and everything, and what we see on the playground growing up is like the guy that's big, loud, and in everybody's face, I'm going to take care of the problem right now.
Right.
I'll give them peace of my mind. And that somehow is the manly thing, but man, it's not. I mean, anybody can fire off the cuff at that. You can also get punched in the mouth for that too.
This is true, and that's the. Sometimes we want to speak the truth, but we don't want to speak the truth in love, and that's where we get hung up with, our mouths getting ourselves in trouble.
They can get us into like I am convinced. Like I watch some of these protesting kids these days and different things, and it's the younger. It's very clear they grew up in a generation where they didn't learn that kind of stuff will get you punched in the mouth on the playground.
Right.
Like your words can get you in
Right.
trouble. I mean, I think that I'll be honest with you. I think there's value in the way we grew up as an older generation, because it's like you learned on that playground a lot of life skills. You learn, hey, I might need to temper what I say. I might need to have a little bit of self-control.
Yeah.
Words have consequences. Actions have consequences. I learned a lot of stuff running around the woods with my tribe of Lord of the Flies friends.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Like, not to make any jokes, but I do agree with you. I think like we do have kind of this stereotypical kind of thing sometimes about being a man, and the idea of just man's going I'm going to get after it and I'm going to do this. And granted, we should get after it and do things and all that. But like when it comes to problems, like I'm not going to be patient about that. I'm going to deal with that right now. I'm going to So the idea of kind of being patient, maybe some people look down on it, but actually it's the harder thing to do, to have that self-control.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, in talking about that whole concept of manly ideal, we men today struggle to find their identity, and they find their identity in their work, in like you said the other day, the bass boat, firearms, whatever the case may be. But in that pursuit of identity, where is that trap of envy and boastfulness and arrogance that does not reflect what is written in there about love?
Well, everybody can, like, if your identity is in, well, okay, let me back up. I learned this in bike racing years ago. No matter how good you were, no matter how many races you won, there's always going to be a day you show up and there's somebody faster. And so if you put your identity in that stuff too much, there's always somebody that's going to beat you somehow. And that's where envy comes in and things, and we start being ugly. Well, he cheated or he did this, that, and the other. And I think that's the same thing with, like, okay, so I just spent, you mentioned D.C. I was with 100 pastors, and quite a few of them are in that room or in churches way bigger than ours, And so if you come in and your identity is I'm pastor so-and-so,
right.
It's my work, it's my calling, whatever. I love what God called me to do. But you come in there and if you start looking around across the dinner table at the meeting and like one of the guys I was talking to is like, oh, they're about the same size, same age as we are, and they have 4 campuses, about quadruple the size, and you start like you can really all of a sudden, either you can be humble and lean into that and try to learn from that. Hey, man, I'm happy for you, or you can let that kind of like, well, man, what's he doing that I'm not, and why does he have that? And you start, oh, well, let me pick at him, or I bet he's doing this because it's just fill in the blank, So it is easy for that to come in if you're putting your identity in the wrong thing. Because like I said, there's always going to be somebody, like as a pastor, there's always going to be somebody with a bigger church, always going to be somebody, probably a better speaker, I'm sure, that kind of thing. So if you put your identity in the wrong thing, then you're going to be envious of whoever's better than you, whoever outperforms you. So same thing for the guys here today that, they're in business, and they're in a certain industry, and, there's the friend that lives down the street, kind of in the same industry, but he got the raise and his business is thriving, yours is not. Right. I mean, it's real easy to fall into that trap, Now, if our identity is in Christ, who I am and what he's done for me and this, that, and the other, then, we maybe not fall into that trap so much. Chad Robichaux was talking about that, and a big part of Mighty Oaks, and resilience and stuff. He talks about this on the podcast all the time, especially with the veteran community. He talks about how a lot of the guys, if your identity is wrapped up in being the Force Recon Marine like Chad was, or the whatever, and it's all about that thing. When that's over. If you don't know how to your identity's all it's gone. Like, what do you do now? And he talks about how a lot of guys have trouble in that, but it does. I mean, envy's an easy thing to fall into when it comes. And look, the moment we start envying like that green ad monster or jealousy and envy and all that, there's never going to be any kind of love there. As a matter of fact, like if you look in the Bible, let me find it. Like in James. I've always loved this. Always loved this passage where he's talking about the 2 types of wisdom. He's talking about worldly wisdom, and he's talking about like godly wisdom, and it's in chapter 3. And he says something interesting there. He said, "Who is wise?" This is chapter 3, verse 13 of James. "Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show it by his good life, by deeds done in humility that comes from wisdom." So he's like, okay, there's a real wisdom, and at its core is humility. So obviously we're not going to be envying. But he says, but if you harbor, now harbor means I'm going to store that up. I'm going to let that store up. If you harbor bitter envy, there's our word, and selfish ambition in your hearts, he says, do not boast about it or deny the truth. In other words, he says, if that's where you're operating from, if your base of operations is constantly comparing yourself to other people and what they have and what you don't have, and you're envious of that, he says, where you have envy and you store up selfish ambition, he says, don't boast about it or deny the truth. And he says, such, in quotes, fake wisdom, right? Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but it is earthly, unspiritual, and of the devil. And then he says, here's what's going to happen if you operate that way. He says, for where you have, or where you operate from, you store it up, you're going to operate from, where you have envy and selfish ambition, He says, there you find disorder. That's chaos, right? An out of order life. You find disorder in every evil practice. So he's like, look, the moment you live your life and you start envying people because your identity's in something, they've got more than you, well, there's no way you're going to operate in love because you've got envy and you've got selfish ambition, and those two things are toxic. And he says it creates disorder, an out of order life. It's going to produce conflict with people. And then every evil practice. Now, love is not an evil practice, right? So there's no way you're going to operate. So we'll say things, do things to get what you want or to get back at someone because you're jealous or whatever that are sinful. And then he goes on and he says, but there's another way to live. He says the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure. It's peace-loving. It's considerate, submissive, full of mercy, good fruit, impartial, and sincere. And then he says, here's the difference. He says, peacemakers who sow in peace raise a harvest of righteousness. So you can have disorder in every evil practice, or you can have a harvest of righteousness. Now, one sounds way better to me, Tracy, but like I said, if we've got our identity in the wrong things, then we see somebody that's got something we don't, we create envy. It's going to make a mess of life. And there's no way we're going to, as men, be doing the things we're supposed to do in love. We won't be patient. We won't be kind. We won't, we won't do any of those things. So.
And of course, in my brain, the first, God's not the author of confusion.
Correct.
And so, and then also, when we looked at being boastful about ourselves, are you familiar with Adrian Rogers?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So when I was...
So Baptist legend.
Yes, exactly. Well, when I was in a youth, shall we say, I went to go hear him, and the one thing that stuck with me about what he said was that every man is ignorant. It's just in different areas, and maybe you don't know what you're ignorant in yet.
That'll preach.
and that's when I want to fall into envy or about what somebody else have, I have to, or boast about what I have. I have to realize, okay, there might be a reason why they're doing so well, and it might be the same reason I don't understand that and I can't execute that to the same level. So
and I think I was thinking about when you were saying that, and we were talking about the envy and all this kind of stuff. I think for a lot of us as men, and of course women can be competitive too, but we really have a competitive spirit.
Yes.
And even if you weren't a sports person, like I was terrible. Like I went out, I remember going out for every sport when we got old enough. When we were in elementary school, I tried football, tried t-ball, baseball, and I tried soccer, basketball, whatever. Like I couldn't play any of those, so I was terrible at that. But I'm still competitive. I'm competitive in other ways. I realized it doesn't matter how competitive I'm in there. I'm stink at those sports, so that's not my thing. But in the other things that I do, I want to do well, and I'm competitive. And I think there's a natural thing in us as men. You're always kind of sizing up the competition in life, whether it's business. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's somebody's family, their yard, what mower they've got. We're always kind of like, got that guy beat, or oh gosh, that guy's beating me. Now I'm mad, and I'm envious. And so I think there's a thing, competitiveness can be good in some things. It's not but there's something in us as men that we always trying to size one another up. And if we're not understanding who we are in Christ, that's always going to be a battle. We're always going to find, as I said in bike race, there's always going to be someone on some day that's better than us, And so you're always going to be frustrated with that. You'll be envious of others. It'll lead you down a path. And that goes back to what you're saying earlier about identity in Christ. That's the thing. I mean, knowing who we are in Christ, what we have in Him, is so important in that. But if we got that competitive, size it up spirit, and we'll start envying, we'll start, and then we've got, as James said, disorder. And every evil practice that leads us to say and do the wrong things, and there's no way we're going to be doing everything in love the way we're asked to out of 1 Corinthians 13. So there's some things there that definitely would are barriers.
It goes on. Basically, we insist on if you insist on your own way, and you keep a record of wrong, that's not showing love. And I know for me. There's often the discussion about in spirited marital discussions, as you like to say.
I call them that.
Yes, that people keep a record of the wrong, and I know for me that the one person beyond everyone else in the world that I love is my wife, and part of the realization for me is that I know I love her because I can't remember anything wrong that she's done.
Oh, well,
So
you get the award. Then.
Well, it's either that or I'm living in ignorance.
Well,
I don't know. But that's always hit me that she is the one person. Everybody else I might.
Oh yeah.
Keep a record of. It's the well, I can forgive, but I remember.
I'm not going to forget. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you're just talking about relationships for a minute. There doesn't matter what kind of relationship it is, whether it's obviously marriage, it's friendship, it's business related. Like, you cannot have a good relationship without extending forgiveness. I mean, you just can't, because there are no perfect relationships, period.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think, oh, my marriage is bad, but look at that marriage over there. It's perfect. And it's like, the grass is not greener. Like, we always look at that. Like, what's that old adage? Like,
it's over the septic tank.
It's like, the reason the grass is greener is because it's over the septic tank.
Yeah.
But like every relationship, because we're imperfect people, there are going to be times we try each other's patience. We don't act in kind ways. And so you can choose in that moment to keep the list.
Yeah.
Or you can choose in love to say, I'm going to forgive and not keep the list. But like, we're making a choice in that moment, a choice for love or to show love or to not show love. But what that's doing is, like, we're either helping the relationship or hurting it, because relationships are never neutral like that.
Yeah.
You ignore them, they'll decline, And so, forgiveness is one of those things. You talk about an act of love. That is a super big act of love. And of course, Jesus, the greatest example of that one. I mean, when he goes to the cross, Father, forgive them, they know not what they're doing. It is finished. All the things we're getting ready to talk about at Easter and have been talking about these last few weeks at Waterlife, that is the supreme act of love. But what an essential one for a relationship. I mean, you can't come into your relationships with a competitive spirit like we talked at. Some people come in and they're couples that are envious of one another. Well, he's doing better in his job. She's doing better in her job, or this, that, and that. She's more popular. I'm not like that. What a disaster for a relationship. But if we cannot learn to forgive one another, show that act of love, the relationship's going to be a mess, and it's not going to be long. It's not going to last long, because we're always going to do things, say things. That are not exactly and we've got to learn to choose to forgive, and that goes both ways. That sometimes we're the one at fault, and we need forgiveness. Sometimes the person on the other side of us does, but we will never have a good friendship, good marriage, good family relationship, any kind of relationship, if we can't learn to do that. And that's another one of those acts of love. It's like, even if I don't feel like doing it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to let this go. I'm going to put it down. So tough.
And thinking along those lines, sitting with the men on Sunday night, we were talking about what is the one that you've had the biggest struggle with, and a number of the men said anger. And
I could believe that. I think a lot of us get mad.
And if you want to talk about that, what is it about our pride, our self-image, our need to be right, our need to have our own way that causes us to lean towards anger
Well, okay. First of all, part of that is good. I mean, like, there are things that should make us angry. Jesus got angry at the right things. He also handled it the right way. That's where we usually mess up. So the Bible tells us, in your anger,
sin not.
Do not sin. Like, it doesn't say, so it's like, you're right to be angry about things, but that's not a license to handle it any way you would like. And anger is one of those things you have to be so careful with, because that's the thing that'll jump on you like a monkey on your back, and you get emotional, and that anger's driving the bus. And man, people have made some terrible decisions, said some terrible things, done some terrible things, evil things out of anger. And so anger is one of those things I think, everybody's going to deal with, and particularly men, we deal with this. And I think some of it's, we have that emotion. Some things should anger us, but trying to keep control of that is very, very difficult. I think, anger is just a tough one. I mean, it's a hard one, because for me, I've got this weird thing in my life where I get so frustrated and angry with things I consider bad form.
Yes.
Like, I have this view of the world that this is how things should operate. You know, you promise to do something, you follow through on it. You should have a job, work, and take care of your family. You just have all these things that, like, how things should operate, whether it's in work world, home, whatever else.
Right.
And unfortunately, the world doesn't always work that way. So I look at things, I'm like, that's bad form. And that stuff just ticks me off when I see it. And I don't have a lot of patience with that sometimes. And it's hard people will push your buttons sometimes, and the anger thing can get all over you. And, you know, when anger takes over, you know, it's you know, you got to be careful. And, you know, I love the fact that Jesus can handle anger correctly, and he can even make a whip and turn over tables. But, you know, we probably don't need to be turning over tables. So, like, we'll let Jesus be Jesus on that, right? Yeah. But anger is that hard one, because there are things that are right to be angry about, and God would want us to be angry about. Like, it would, like, we keep seeing all this stuff about, you know, people that abuse children. People that harm women. I just, you know, some of the senseless violence and stuff we see, crime on TV, and we should be right to be angry about that. Yeah. You know, we should be right to be angry about when we see injustice. We see people that are corrupt, people that are using their positions and power to do things. I mean, all that stuff should make us mad. Yeah. I think there'd be something wrong with this if it doesn't. Yeah. But how we handle it, you know, that's the big key and the big driver. Yeah. You know, are we handling it in a godly way? In your anger, when you're angry, just don't sin. Handle it the right way. And that, man, I know for me, I can't say that I've always done that, you know, in our church lore, and certainly my family's lore. I can't go to Lowe's and Boone because I attacked a self-checkout one time. But when I was frustrated, but it's tough. Anger's hard. Anger's a hard one. And I think it goes back to one of your questions earlier where you were talking about, like, just in man culture, we kind of accept that, like, man's mad, man's going to spout off, say things, and we're missing that power under control thing again. Right. You know? So anybody that's given full vent to their anger, like the Bible says in Proverbs, that's a fool. It says a fool gives full vent to his anger.
Yeah. And speaking of that, probably one of the things that make most men angry is something that disrupts the tranquility of their home. And so the question is, how do we lead our family in love? And Joby talks about, you know, being the first to repent, being the first to worship, being the lead apologizer, as he said, and the lead person with gratitude. Yeah. So how can we show that in our family?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about why we should do that. For, you know, obviously, you know, as husbands and you know, fathers, those of us who got kids, you know, we are the head of the family. Christ is the head of the home. You know, we're the head of the, you know, we're supposed to, you know, protect, provide, lead. You know, we've talked about that at length at ManCamp. And so leadership is always not with just words. You got to set the example. Right. So that's one thing I learned about kids a long time ago. You can talk all day long, but they know the truth. They're smart enough to watch you, and they can tell you what the priorities are, and you know, they know all that stuff. But, you know, leadership truly is by example. That's something we teach here to our staff all the time. We have 4 staff core values, and it's be passionate, be professional, be an example, and be a team. And all those things are important to me. And I always tell staff, and I mean this, I'm like, you will never have a problem with me if those 4 things are being done. If those things are not being done, then I will insert myself and we will have a problem. I'll hold you accountable to it, because I hold myself to accountable those same standards. But for me, that be example thing is key, because, like, I think leadership is by example. You know, so if, for instance, I don't have a right to step up and challenge people in the church to put God first over your finances and do what the Bible says and give generously to the church, you know, to the mission of the church, if I'm not doing that. Right. I don't have, you know, like, if I believe God honors excellence. You know, we should give our best to God, and yet if I show up on Sunday morning and I haven't practiced and gone over my notes and done the best that I can, I mean, I'm blowing smoke, right? So it's the same thing in the home. I think you know, we need to be leading the way with everything, because our kids are watching and they're learning. We're supposed to be setting the direction for all that, right? So they're going to learn. So we should be the ones that first, you know, to show patience, to show kindness, to do those things. I'm a big believer in this too. Like, one of the greatest teaching tools for your children is for them to see you say, hey, I blew that up. I made a mess of that.
Yeah.
Right. Like I was joking about a minute ago, the self-checkout.
Yes.
I remember I literally had to tell my son, I said, yeah, your dad acted like a knucklehead.
Yeah.
That's not how, because my younger son made some comment about, Dad, I don't think Jesus would do that. And I told him to shut up. But but after that, I had to apologize. I said, you guys are right. That was not how a Christian man operates. Your dad was wrong on that. That was sinful behavior. I let my anger get the best of me. So I think, showing that to is important because kids are learning, they're watching, but also, I mean, that's what men do. I mean, we should set the example. So.
Yeah, and classically, that with your children, more is caught than taught.
Oh, and it's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Yeah.
So,
but speaking of the children, why is it important for us to show love to our children so that they get an understanding of God's love?
Well, yeah. So there's a study out there that shows that most people's view of God is developed from their view of their father. Mm-hmm. So if in the home I'm a raging tyrant, I'm just, there's never any kind of gray. Everything's like, it's a standard. You failed the standard. You're punished. Mm-hmm. They're going to get a pretty vengeful view of God. The opposite's also true as well. If they see some grace, they see someone, demonstrate. So that is a sobering thing. I remember when I read that article years ago, I'm like, well, this is sobering. Mm-hmm. I'm like, even though obviously they should trust what the Bible says and let's get through it, but they're going to have a picture in their mind from their heavenly father by the earthly father. So that's pretty doggone humbling to me to think about. So we got to be very serious about that. But they also, not that they're just going to develop a view of God, but they need that for life. I mean, we had a tragedy here in the community and just recently, and you think about family and you think about stuff, and I don't know, man. Kids need to know their love. They need to know their value. They need to know, what that love looks like. And that doesn't mean part of that love means you sit down when they're wrong and we discipline them. Yeah. But they need to know that there's love in the home. I remember one kid one time I dealt with years ago when I was a youth pastor, and I remember he had gotten in trouble on a trip, and we had to call the parents. He's like, my parents don't care. They don't care about me. It was just really a heartbreaking thing. I was mad at the kid what he did, but then the kid's talking about his family life, and he's like, my parents are they're self-absorbed. They're always doing their hobbies and their stuff, and they don't have time for me. And and that's so kids obviously need to know that we love them, and they need to see the example of biblical love, which is patient, kind, that acting kind of love. Mm-hmm. So, like you said, it's going to be caught more than taught. So they're watching that. So they do need that. They need that to know they're loved. They need to know that they're secure. They need to know that that unconditional love exists for them. That God has that for them, but Dad has that for them as well. So, and they're going to see that. We should use our words. Mm-hmm. But also they're going to see that in our actions. Yeah. Backing that up.
Yeah, well, and speaking of actions, and going back to where we were talking about love is an actionable word, how do we take our gratitude for what God has done in our life through our salvation through Jesus Christ and actually take that and express it as love toward other people?
Yeah, well, like we were talking about our wives here a moment ago. For those of us who are married, he talks about husbands love your wife as Christ loved the church. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's okay, so, all right, I'm thankful God loves me. Yeah. And now that's a tall order. I look at that one. I'm like, the wives are just asked to submit, yield the way in love. Right. I mean, love as Christ loved the church. That's a way taller order. Oh, yeah. That's a way more demanding order. Ladies always get hot and bothered by, when they read, but I'm like, have you read that? Like, it's way more demanding for the man when you look at what he's asked to do. But with that love, we're to love as Christ loved the church. But I always think about that like, okay, well, wow, okay. If God has loved me the way He's loved me, and I've got to pay, okay, out of gratitude, that should be like the motivation, right? Like gratitude, and really, we talked about this in a sermon a couple of weeks ago, and with the in the Origin series where the woman comes in and washing the feet of Jesus and everything. We were just talking about the power of gratitude. Like gratitude should be that. It's not just I'm aware of something God did for me. It's not just that. I appreciate it. Like true gratitude is going to be expressed, right? So we ought to let our gratitude for Jesus, the love He showed us, the grace He showed us, we ought to extend that to others because we're Christians, because we're thankful for it. And so that is a powerful motivation to be able to do that, to be reminded, like, man, how can I go over here and treat this person? Like God showed me so much grace. How can I do that? And actually, Jesus told a couple parables with that exact theme. Here's a guy that's debts were forgiven, and he goes out and there's a tiny debt somebody owes him, and he doesn't forgive them, and the king finds out about it. He's like, what are you talking about? I forgave you. Why would you not forgive? So we've got an obligation to do that. But I think gratitude, man, it's what a powerful motivator for us to be patient. Like think about it. If I'm somebody's trying, if Tracy, this would never happen, of course, but if you were trying my patience, and I have that thought for a moment, man, that Tracy drove me, I'm so irritated with him, but then I realize, wow, God is so patient with me. That gratitude for that helps me extend patience to you. Same thing, what does he say? Love is kind. Okay, so, man, that was not a kind thing she said to me, or that was not a kind thing they did to me at work. But you know what? God has been incredibly kind to me. And so out of gratitude for him, I'll extend kindness even though it hasn't been returned my way. Right? I mean, I think that is like a good thing to keep in our minds that motivates us to do the right thing. And you can go on down the list on all the things that are in there, and whether it's not envy, not keeping a list. You know what? Yeah, people keep lists in lives, but God didn't keep a list with me. Right. He forgave all my sins. So you know what? I'm going to extend forgiveness to out of gratitude for God. So it's gratitude is a powerful motivator. Yeah. Powerful motivator.
Yeah. So how can we actually be that conduit to share the love? What can we be doing in our lives to actually push that gratitude and that love toward other people?
Well, like every single interaction with another human being is an opportunity to express love, right? To act in love.
Yeah.
So you don't have to have any feeling, warm, fuzzy feeling. I just choose to do the loving thing. So anytime, so think about it. Think about the course of a day. We get up, might see the family for a few minutes, got a couple things we're doing, getting breakfast, getting the kids out the door, whatever we're doing, grandkids out the door, and then we're out. And maybe those of us who are working, we're at work, or the retired people, they tell me they're busier now than they were at work, which I don't believe it. But anyway, they're off doing their things, whatever it is. You might go to the meeting, you go to lunch, you're in there dealing with a waitress, later on. Maybe you're at a meeting at church or in a service, you're out in your community, whatever. I mean, there's just going to be all these opportunities, to act in love, and just to do kind things. So, all right. My patience is being tried because you know what, the plane has been delayed again.
Yes.
So I think I was telling you about that. I come back from D.C. the other day. They got us on the airplane, and the pilot came on and said, "Well," and I'm just like that's never good when the pilot comes on. Usually they're trying to get you to get a credit card, but that's on the back end of the flight, right? But he's like, well, there's 3 things conspiring against us. And I'm like, 3 things, And so he starts going through the list, and I'm like, instantly I'm just miffed. And I'm like, but I don't have any control of it, right? So, we can get upset, we can get frustrated and start having a bad attitude toward the flight attendant.
Right.
And griping and give them a hard time. Or we can just say, you know what, it's not, they can't control the weather. They're not controlling the tower. And I will choose to extend kindness and patience, right? Yeah. So I think there are going to be those opportunities every day just to do the things that we read in 1 Corinthians 13, to just do the loving thing. And I think I shared this with the guys. I did. I shared this with the guys at ManCamp the other night. Craig Rochelle had this little phrase he said one time when he was talking about relationships. He said, if you think of something good to say, say it. Yeah. If you think of something good to do, do it. And I think there's, what great ways to express love. Okay, like with my neighbor over there. You know what? There's Miss Bonnie's over there. She's a lonely widow lady, and I see her getting her mail. I know I'm busy, but let me run over there and have a conversation with her for a second. I said as she's getting her mail. That's a loving thing. It doesn't have to do these grandiose things all the time, but you just look for a way to act in love. What's the loving thing to do? Okay, well here I am. Somebody at work is struggling. It's really not my department. It's really not my area. I am kind of busy, but you know what? It looks like they need a hand. I'll step over there and give 5 minutes, 10 minutes to help them. Right. I think, the sky's the limit on that stuff. It's just, you just have to be intentional. But that's the thing. A lot of times we get so self-focused on what we're doing, or we're constantly in excuse mode. Because I know this is an easy one. Like, I've never seen an opportunity to express love or serve somebody that comes at a convenient time. Yeah. It's always like, I'm on the way to work, I'm late. It's always when something's pressing. And there's always that moment, am I going to stop and do something or not? So you have to not make excuses. You have to look for the opportunities and certainly take them. And there's simple ways. I mean, just go about your day and try to be kind.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge thing. Just try to be kind. Don't. How about this? Just don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
I mean, so many people, and I think you've seen this in our culture. Our culture's just in jerk mode these days. I don't remember growing up people being as much in jerk mode, toxic mode all the time now. And people are just hateful now, mean. Language is bad. They're just rude to everybody. Don't be that.
Yeah. And I think partially the whole pandemic, people got alone by themselves and realized that got used to not actually interacting with people and knowing how to be civil.
Exactly. So I mean, think about it. Just go through the day and try to be kind and not a jerk, right? Look for an opportunity wherever you go for an act of service. Yeah. It's not hard. I mean, literally, I was coming in here a minute ago, and there was a couple coming in for a meeting here, and I'm like, hey, I got the door for you, and they were trying to get, it takes 2 seconds.
Yes.
Did it change the world? But it's simple. It's just communicating love after you. I mean, how hard is that? After you. I have to remind myself all that time because I'm running like a competition all the time. And the partner, just slow down, let somebody else go first. So I think doing those kind of things, and then sharing Christ, looking for opportunities to speak a word of Christ, point people, invite people to church. I mean, those are always loving things we can do, but the reality is just think about that framework, right? Hey, what's that good thing I could do or say right now? Yeah. And then just take the point to just go do that. So if it's like I'm sitting there today and, the wife did something, I'm like, you know what, that's nice. Hey, thank you. Mm-hmm. We talked about the magic words a couple weeks ago. Please and thank you.
Yes.
That's a novel idea, but just don't be a jerk. Just don't be a jerk. Yeah. Don't be hateful. Be nice, be kind. Do the countercultural thing these days, show patience with people, be gracious. One thing I've learned in my life is there's no reason to be rude and unkind to people who had nothing to do with it.
Right.
I remember one time I flew out to Salt Lake City where my friend lives to go on a week of snowboarding. He lives out there in the Wasatch Mountains, and I remember going out there, I'm at the dreaded carousel and the bags are not coming around. Right. I'm like, they've lost my luggage. And so they lost my most important part of my gear, the snowboard, all my stuff, my gear, my boots and all that stuff are gone. And so I go get in line, and of course I was not the only one. Yeah. And I was, I was irritated, but I got up there and I'm watching people just give this guy up and down the road. Now the bad part about the story too is the guy had a speech impediment. He stuttered, right? And so he's trying to be very gracious, and they're just giving this guy a hard time. And I remember thinking that I don't want to be like that person. Yeah. It's ridiculous because I intellectually know he had nothing to do with. He's in Salt Lake City. My bags got all messed up in Charlotte. Yeah, had nothing to do with Salt Lake City. He doesn't even touch the bags. Yeah. I know he's the representative, and he's going to get. But it's there's no need for me to be irritated with him and be rude. So I went up there and I was calm, and I'm just like, okay, what I need to do. And the guy was very gracious, and he told me, he said, well, we can do this, and we'll have it, we'll find it, we'll track it, we'll get it to you where you're going to be, and do all that stuff. But there's just no need to be rude to people like that and to be mean. I think that if I could leave the guys with anything in a world that is in short supply of that, just not being the jerk, just not being rude, just not being big and loud and hateful. I mean, and understanding the people that are on the receiving end of that half the time don't have anything to do with it anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So let's just not. I mean, world would probably be a better place if we just didn't do that. And I was like, I'm just not going to do that. Yeah. And everywhere I could say that's one thing I can usually do fairly well. Learn that they don't have anything to do with it. Yeah. We had the big flight coming back in the ice storm that weekend from we were out west, and the flight got canceled 5 times in one day, and then it got canceled. My wife she actually said a funny word. I found it funny, but she was so frustrated. We had to camp out in the airport. But I remember nobody in this airport has anything to do with the fact that it's snowing and there's ice on the ground. Right. Everybody's frustrated because everybody wants to get home. Nobody wants to sit there and try to camp out in the chairs in the airport. But at the same time, there's no reason to be hateful to somebody. So just be kind, be nice. And it doesn't mean you don't have to address a problem with customer
Right.
service, but you don't have to treat people like dogs. You just go in there like, hey man, yeah, this is not right. You promised this, but you don't have to walk. You idiots, you know,
Yeah.
you don't have to start that way.
Yeah.
You don't have to attack somebody's
Yeah.
character and whatnot.
So do we need to modify the ManCamp shirts and say, act like men, don't be a jerk?
Don't be a jerk would be a good slogan. I got stronger language than that too, but I'll keep that off the podcast. But,
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm bothered by that. The longer I live, the one of the things that bothers me a lot in American culture these days is just the crassness of people, the harshness of people, just no need to be rude.
Yeah.
And I've gotten in some altercations with people, like, and people are just getting mad about something. I was hiking one time, this guy freaks out, you know, and I guess got too close to him during the pandemic, and he's just acting crazy. And I just looked at him and was like, no need to be rude.
Yeah.
He's calling me names, dropping the F-bombs, all this stuff. I'm just like, hey, man, no need to be rude.
Yeah.
As I scampered down the rocks
Right.
like a gazelle where he
Yes.
was having trouble. And, so it does bother me that our culture is that way. And so let's just not contribute to that.
Yeah.
Let's do the opposite. And, man, good grief, what a difference that makes in our world today. And even among Christian people, man, there's so many people, like, sometimes some of the way people talk to our staff, sometimes about things they're mad about. It's just like, good grief, you don't need to act that way.
Yeah.
I don't like people doing that to my staff. I mean, it irritates me because there's no need to, once again, there's no need to be rude.
Yeah.
There's a way to handle your complaint or your issue and whatever. We can
Yeah.
deal with that, but there's no need to be rude. So don't be that way.
Okay.
Would you agree, Tracy?
I would agree.
Well, there you go.
And you know what? If you have a question or a complaint, where should they send an email?
They should send it to podcast@waterlifechurch.com. We've gotten a couple questions along the way. We got a good one from the general podcast coming up that I've got to do some, and I've been wanting to address that. I've got to get some time to get things together. But yeah, send any questions like that. Or let's put this out there, Tracy. If there are topics that the podcast people out there that listen to ManCamp Podcast would like us to cover or question, like not just a question, but like, hey, here's a topic, have you ever thought about addressing that? That'd be fun too as well. We've got some plans to interview some people going forward and things, but also some things that'll be topical because we're walking through books right now, but then we'll be doing different things in ManCamp. So we'll entertain those things if you send them our way. So
Certainly.
very good.
Well, I guess that wraps up our time together, and we appreciate everyone listening. I appreciate you being here and sharing your words of wisdom there with us.
I don't know about that. I share what I've learned, what I know from the Bible. But man, I'm telling you, just to reiterate, the guys like, hey guys, if you find this a challenge, your pastor does too. This is like everything be done in love. It's challenging, but God can help us do it. And it doesn't mean, even though it's challenging, just throw up your hands and don't try it. Let's go out there and let's, with God's help, do what He calls us to do. And so I want to say to the men, man, we love and appreciate you. We have such a good tribe of men here at Waterlife that I'm thankful for, and it's great to see the growth in our men in their faith, and guys that are taking seriously their roles as protector and provider in their families. And man, I love seeing what God's doing among men. So just, man, get the men, get after it and keep after it, and this is good stuff.
That's right. Well, thank you for joining us on this podcast episode, and the last word to leave you with, don't be a jerk.
There you go.
Act like a man, stand like a tree, roots go